Well, hey there, well, hey there, well, hey there, fam. Welcome to Reinvent. It is that time of the day or of the week again to reinvent your life, your finances, your family. It does not matter what it is. God is a God of reason. God is concerned with your life being restored, being reinvented, being reconstructed. I want to speak today about the number one pitfall, the abundance pitfall, and the number one mistake we make that is costing us our abundance, that is costing us every year. So here's the thing. Each and every year, a lot of us pursue the year one believing that the Lord wants us to be abundant or believing that the year is going to be better than the previous year. Which is the case, I believe it's the desire of the God who made us because he is the God of abundance, right? But the mistake comes in not in that thinking, but in how we pursue or desire to fulfill that particular thinking. So the number one mistake we make, which I'm going to tell you what it is right now. Before I do that, though, I want you to drop on chats. What do you think? What do you think is the number one mistake that is costing people every year? Some people might think it's planning. Some people might think it's how we manage our finances. What do you think is the number one mistake that is costing every one of us each and every year? Okay, so we'll delve deeper into what is costing us. But let me now start by sharing how we pursue each and every year, what we do, and which is clearly not working, right? It's not working. So for that, I want us to remember a story in the book of Second Kings. I think it's Second Kings chapter 4. In Second Kings chapter 4, there is a particular story. In this particular story, a woman goes to the prophet and he says, "Hey, man of God, you know your servant is dead." The prophet says, the prophet is dead. In fact, the author defines the emotions or explains the emotions of the widow, and he says that the widow went to the prophet crying, wailing, right? So we understand the emotions were there. Now, the emotions alone does not improve this woman's situation. And I think a lot of us believe that if I can be sorry enough, if I can be more desiring of this thing, if I can be more ambitious, if I can have more sorrow, more grief, or more passion. And I want to say that although that is good, but emotions, whether sad or good or positive, it's not what really gives us results or revenue or a change. So the situation of this particular woman is that now she's in debt, and she says to the prophet, the situation is so bad that the creditor is going to come and take my children to become slaves. And this was the slavery of the days, that if you could not pay someone, or if you could not pay your creditor, they would come and take either your son or your daughter, and they would come and work. It was not similar to how people will be sold off today, and they will even be raped and so forth. They would come and actually work for whatever you owed them, right? So in any case, I'm not arguing now the correctness or the morality of that. I'm just explaining how different it was, right? So let me read that text for you. A certain woman of the wives of the sons of the prophets cried out to Elisha, saying, your servant, my husband, is dead. So we know that there is emotion, there is grief, and there is prayer as well, because there's petitioning of the prophet, right? There is petitioning of the prophet. And he explains the character of the prophet. He says that the prophet was a man that feared the Lord. So, let me give you 3 things that we do differently each and every year that just don't seem to work all the time. 1, we adjust our emotions. We say, if I can feel this way or that way, if I can really show remorse, or if I can, it's not the key. Number 2, we adjust our petitioning. If I can petition better, if I can petition differently, that is a contributing factor, but it's not a determining factor. So there's a difference between things that determine something and things that contribute. So prayer will contribute to you having an abundance, will contribute, but it's not a determining factor. So I want us to get to the core, to the determining factor. So your emotions are contributing but not determining to your finances or to your abundance, to your breakthrough. Your petitioning and how you petition are contributing factors, right? The other thing is it's the righteousness of this man. It's the good standing of this man. We know that a good name is to be desired more than gold and silver, but a good name alone is not a determining factor. It is a contributing factor, because I know a lot of good poor people, and I know a lot of bad rich people or abundant people. So it's not a determining factor, but a contributing factor. Let's now look at a determining factor. A determining factor is found in verse 7 of the same story. Verse 7 of the same story says, then she came and told the man of God and said, okay, no, that's not the one I'm looking for. Verse 6 rather. Now it came to pass, when the vessels were full, that she said to her son, bring me another vessel. And he said, there is not another vessel. So the oil ceased. So there was an abundance of oil. There was a continuous, unending, unceasing oil, which represents an abundance of something supernatural, an abundance of something natural that had tapped into a supernatural abundance of flow. So in the world that we live in, there is a ceasing or a limited provision. However, we can tap into unlimited resources. We can tap into the supernatural, which is what happened here with this woman. There was a supernatural, unlimited, unending, unceasing oil. So she tapped into an abundance of another realm, right? Now, what caused it to end? The Bible says it was when the vessels that she was pouring into ceased. So let me tell you what happened here. After she tells the story to Elisha, Elisha then says to the woman, hey, woman, to solve your lack, to solve your limitations, to solve your debt issue, to reinvent your financial situation, this is what you need to do. He says to the woman, go and, okay, he asks first, what do you have in your house? Then the woman has oil, right? But the oil is limited. It's very little. Perhaps, like the other woman said, it could cook just one meal and that's it, right? So, here's what Elisha does. He does not look at the contents. He looks at the capacity, the containers. So he says to the woman, go and borrow vessels. So increase your capacity, increase the containers. He does not tell the woman how many containers he must go and borrow. So what then limits the contents is how many containers she goes to borrow. So the number of containers she had, which in this case was borrowed containers, is what actually then limits the contents. We know that containers represent capacity, and contents represent revenue, represent possessions, represent what you then get to the increase you have in a year. So she goes, she borrows the containers. They keep on, and she enlists a team, which is something we can talk about another time, that you must have a team if you are to then reinvent and rebuild yourself. Anyway, they keep on pouring, and then she says to the son, bring another container. And the son says, no, we've run out of containers. And only then, a small jar of oil, which was being poured to, let's say, 100 bigger jars, now ceased. I want you to see the supernatural principle here. The supernatural principle here says, one, it does not matter the size of the content. What matters is the size of the capacity. The contents will continue to flow for as long as the capacity is available. The contents will continue to flow for as long as capacity is available. So, Vusi, what's the one mistake that we make every year, in which is an abundance pitfall? So the number one mistake we make is that each and every year we seek to increase contents. But I want to tell you, the problem is not the contents, the problem is capacity, because contents always follow capacity. Content follows capacity, or contents follow capacity. So if you increase capacity, the flow will continue, but if capacity ceases, the flow will also cease. So if each and every year we seek to have more money, we seek to have more cars, we seek to have more. But this more of content only follows capacity. Let me show you this from God in Genesis 1. In Genesis 1, the creation story in days. Okay? I want to show you that God creates capacity before he creates contents, because contents always follows containers or capacity. In Genesis, we know the 7 days, the 6 days of creation. On the seventh day, he rested. On day one, he creates light. On day two, he creates the sea and the sky. On day three, he creates land and plants, right? On day 4, he creates the sun, the moon, and the stars. On day 5, he creates the fish and the birds. And then on day 6, he creates the animals and the humans. Did you already see the parallels? The first set of 3 days, he creates the containers. He creates the habitat. And then on the second pair, or the second third, or the second threes, he creates the inhabitants. So they even have a synergy. 1 goes with 4, 2 goes with 5, and 3 goes with 6. On day 1, he creates the container of the sun, the moon, and the stars. He creates lights. He creates light. He creates light. But this light is going to be inhabited by the sun, the moon, and the stars, which is what will give expression to the light. So Contents give expression to the container. In other words, meaning precedes expression. I want to repeat that. Meaning precedes expression. So if I want to express a flow, if I want to express an abundance, I must first create meaning and capacity. Okay, but what gives us meaning is capacity. So there is light that's created, but it's gonna have to be expressed. Okay, then day 2, he creates the sea and the sky, which on day 5 he creates what will express, and they are expressed through the fish and the birds. So the contents of the sea and the contents of the sky is then what is created in day 5 through the contents, all right, through the fish and the birds. In day 3, he creates the land and the plants. And then on day 6, the last day of creation, he creates humans who are then going to be the contents and who are going to express whatever was created, the capacity that is the land and the plant. Then he says to the fish, the birds, the animals, and the humans, he says, multiply and fill. All of them, he told them, I think all of them, he told them to fill, okay, or to increase, meaning that you have this huge capacity that requires to be filled. So capacity demands that there must be a flow that continues to grow and increase unto the fullness of capacity. So how do you hack each and every year increase and flow? Not by forcing fishes and birds. No. By increasing your pond. The more you have a bigger pond, you can have more. Fishes will automatically be propelled and be called by the size of the capacity. A demand will be placed on the increase. So capacity places demand on contents to create increase. You don't tell the animals to increase. You give them a proper land that has good vegetation, that has proper plants, and as they eat and then they become fat, they multiply. So our mistake, again, our pitfall in the abundance mindset and pursuit is that we want to increase contents. But contents do not enforce the capacity to grow. Because capacity limits contents, then no matter how much content you have, there will always be limited to the capacity of your containers. Okay? So that's why you have someone who wins lotto or someone who gets money from IRAF or some accident or some inheritance. But because they do not have the capacity mentally to handle the contents that they have just received, they are always going to default to the size of their capacity, of their container. Contents always default to the size of the capacity. So they are always, if they have a 5 rand capacity, if they have a 5 rand capacity thinking, in no time, whatever finances or contents they have will default to the size of their capacity of thinking. So you have to then increase contents. I want to share with you how God created capacity in Genesis chapter 1. I want to share with you how God increased capacity or created capacity in Genesis chapter 1. Verse 3, let's start with verse 3. Verse 3 says, then God said, the first thing to create capacity is what I call the principle of accountability. The first thing or the first place you must just adopt a mindset, a principle of accountability. What is accountability? A lot of us think of accountability as punishment, and that's why we don't like it. We think of accountability and we think of a man or a king or a ruler that oppresses us, and a teacher that if we did not do our homework, gives you a hiding or a beating, corporal punishment, and you remember it in such a way that your hand was swollen after each beating. So we have this negative connotation attached to it, and that's why we don't like it. But that's not what accountability is. Accountability is more of taking ownership. Accountability is saying, I am responsible, and I am responsible for my own increase. I am responsible for where I am. I am responsible for increasing my capacity. And that is why Elisha did not say, here's what I'm going to do for you. Elisha did not say, pray more. Elisha did not say, be more righteous, because all those sort of relinquish responsibility to God, to either a super natural or a higher being or a pastor, or how we say, hey, niskulegise, pray for us. That relinquishes responsibility and ownership to someone else. So accountability is saying, I am responsible, and I am going to take responsibility for my thinking, for my intentions, and for my actions. For my thinking, for my intentions, for my actions. I am taking responsibility, and I'm going to do something about it. So that's the then there. There is a response, right? Then number 2, God says. So it means that capacity is increased by your communication. Capacity increases based on how you communicate. I think it is Jordan Peterson. It is Jordan Peterson who says that there is no more exceptional capacity to be dangerous than to be articulate. I hope I'm phrasing it correctly. Yeah, he says something to those lines, that there is no more exceptional capacity to be dangerous than the capacity to be articulate. In other words, he's saying that the capacity to communicate is the most dangerous capacity one can create. Think about it. Think about it. There is no one greatest world changer I can think of that did not have a great capacity to communicate. Think of even in the evil, your Hitlers and others that really pioneered some of the greatest evil. They were great communicators. Then on the righteous or on the good side, your Martin Luther King, your Nelson Mandela, they had a great capacity to communicate. Also, go back to the story of the woman here in 2 Kings. If she needed or had to go and borrow vessels or containers, she must have had a great capacity to persuade the neighbors, who themselves needed a capacity to borrow or to lend to her their capacity. Okay? So, communication is one of the greatest capacities you can create. Okay? Now, maybe you ask me, how do I increase my capacity to communicate? Well, it's not our conversation for today. I have two mentorship programs that I run. One mentorship program I run, it's called the I4. It is a capacity building mentorship program. So I4 means that it stands for four intelligences. It is physical intelligence, intellectual intelligence, emotional intelligence, and spiritual intelligence. If you can improve and increase capacity or intelligence in these four, you have just increased capacity for the supernatural in an extreme way. Then the other one, it's called C4, which stands for change 4. Okay, it's another 4 realms of change change that we are creating. The first one, we have created capacity in I4, but from there we are now creating contents in C4, and we are talking about courage, confidence, communication, and then we are talking about change. So you will have to join those. So yeah, number one is communication. So God said, okay? For today, I would say go look for communication channels that you can follow on YouTube. These things are available. Increase your capacity to communicate. One of the tools that I use even today, it's practice. You become better in anything by doing the thing. You know, musicians do not become better musicians, like a singer does not become better just by playing an instrument. I've never learned or heard of a singer that said, oh yeah, you know, how I'm able to hit high notes and all of those things, it's because I actually spent 12 hours practicing the piano. Soccer players, athletes, they practice what they want to improve. So go practice speaking, practice writing. I spend time practicing with a pen on a page, on a paper, writing out. There's something about writing that engraves certain things to your brain. I copy the author I want to write like. I take their book, place it here, take a notebook, copy word for word. And when I begin to type out the book that I'm writing, there seems to be certain words and a writing style that comes out on that paper I am typing because of the writing. I speak, I listen to Jordan Peterson, I practice certain words, the vocab, the diction, the style he uses. I speak it out for certain minutes. And then when I stand in front of a crowd, that comes out. So that's communication. The second thing, the Bible says, and God saw. That's the second thing. In capacity, you have to change this. You have to change your sight, your perception, how you see things, what you see. You can never go to a place you have never envisioned or thought of. How do you even know that you have arrived? Okay. Before the children of Israel could get to the promised land, one thing God had them practice was to send the spy to the land. Why? Because there's something about vision that creates a hunger, that creates an extension, that extends the cords of your own being, that extends enlarges your desire, so that more fire and more of God's passion can be invested in you to pursue and to have something. Again, it is Jordan Peterson that says, we are of the culture that the word has the capacity to create to create habitable change, right? from chaos. But with that, he's also saying to us that what we see naturally and physically will come from what we see mentally. So you have to create a vision for yourself that is far beyond than where you are right now. And what's the simplest way to hack vision? The simplest way to hack vision is through exposure. Expose yourself far beyond where you are today. Research places. Research, watch. Some, there used to be a show like Top Billing. It used to frustrate me. But when I began to watch it with an eye of what is possible, rather than with the eye of what I do not have, something changed. Because I now realized what was available for me. Here's the thing that where the enemy gets us. The enemy knows the power of exposure and the power of vision. So he has us looking at things and seeing what we do not have rather than what is possible. It is the oldest temptation. In Genesis, he says to them that the Lord knows that in the day you eat this thing, in other words, he's moving their eyes from what they have to what they are not allowed to eat. So in the day that you are frustrated by what you do not have, you lose vision of what is available for you. So go out there, coaches, look at coaches that are running 6-figure businesses and check what is available for me. Look at what they have bought, what they are establishing. It's more than material things. It's the freedom they have to choose what school and where to take their children. It's the freedom they have to go on vacation in Jan rather than in December or whenever. It's that capacity to choose. Look at pastors who are living at a level you want to live, rather than being frustrated and starting stories that, you look at their ring, it's the ring that they have, they got it from Nigeria, they are using voodoo, rather than thinking that every good comes through evil, which in any way is going to be another limitation that you enforce, because if you think it comes through evil, you are not going to pursue it because you want to be righteous, right? But think about what is available for you. Okay? Then that's the two things. The other thing, the Bible says, and God made, right? So in the first instance, when he creates the first capacity of light, the Bible says God said and God saw. So in the capacity of light, we are learning about communication and vision. In the second capacity of the sky and the sea, we are introduced to a different word. We are introduced to the word of making. Now, this tells us that the first one, light came out of nothing. The second one, making, is different from vision. Vision is creating out of nothing in your mind's eye. But making is taking existing things and combining and getting your hands dirty. So it's now making. So the third thing, or the fourth thing, because the first one is accountability, the second one is communication, the third one is vision, the fourth one is, this year, you've got to increase your work ethic. Work ethic. So these are capacities. I call them capacity. Capacity number one, you have to increase your accountability capacity, your capacity to account to yourself even before anyone else. This is the capacity to take responsibility for your intentions and your actions and your emotions. Number two, it is the capacity to communicate articulately and fluently and powerfully. Number 3, it is the capacity to vision, to think, to see beyond where you are and where you've been. And number 4, it is the capacity to work higher and harder than you've worked before. Work ethic. The only way to improve your work ethic again is to work even harder. But maybe another hack I can throw is the hack of energy. We work as hard as our energy allows us. And energy comes from how much we eat, how we eat, or how healthy we eat. So we have 2 types of fuels that our bodies burn. Either our bodies burn sugar or they burn ketones. Sugar is paper fuel. It burns quicker, it burns higher but quickly, and then it's done. Ketones are like your high octane fuel. They burn slower and they go further. So that's the energy you want to have. Okay? I run master classes on health, and even in my I4 coaching in physics, in the physical intelligence, the first class we had this year was on how to eat, because what you eat is the information you give to your body, and you can misinform your body, and based on misinforming your body, you are going to cause or create what we call misapplication, or what you will see in most things, they will say it's something is malfunctioning. Misinformation of your body creates a malfunction of your body. Okay? That's the one. Now, how many are those? 1, we said capacity to account. 2, we said capacity to communicate. 3, we said capacity to vision. 4, we said capacity to work hard. This is the last one. In the other one he created, which was the land, right? And the plants. There's something, I want to read it. It is in verse 7, I think. Let there be the firmament. Okay, verse 7. Thus God divided the waters, and God called heaven evening. Okay, I'm losing one, where the waters, and God called, okay. Anyway, I'm forgetting the verse, but I want you to see what he does in day 3. In day 3, verse 9, then God said, let the waters under the heavens, and God called dry land and gathered together, and so it was good. And God said, verse 11, and God said, let the earth bring forth grass and herb. Let the earth bring forth grass and herb. What is that? It is the capacity to produce solutions. It is the capacity to be solutions orientated, or the capacity to create solutions. You've got to increase this capacity this year. The capacity to create solutions. So he produces the land, or he said, let there be land, right? Then he says, but land, I don't want to leave you there. I'm going to bring contents which are animals and human beings. But before animals and the human beings come, you've got to provide solutions before they are required. In this case, the solution is animals, creatures are going to desire food. You have, and humans also are going to desire food. So we've got to premeditate and pre-create a solution before there is even the contents that have a particular problem. So you have to have this mind of saying, what is going to be needed? You have to preempt problems and pre-create solutions. If you increase this capacity this year to preempt and pre-produce solutions, contents are a given. We are going into Feb. What are some of the problems we are going to encounter? Some of them are going to be relational. Some of them are going to be financial. Some of them are going to be people spending and competing because they want to please each other in relationships. Preempt that. And then if you have increased your capacity to communicate, come up with a solution and communicate that solution ahead of time. And then revenue will come. Possessions and contents will come, right? Then he says the other thing is produce herbs. Herbs speak to health solutions. Herbs are given for a healing of a people. If you bring these 5 together, I call them grace. I call them the grace capacity. Contents are given. Contents are given. Just try me on this. Try me on this. This year, focus on increasing these 5 capacities. Then come back to me at the end of the year. Better yet, join I4 and C4. Let's work with you on the 2 legs of creating change, on capacity and creating content or creating change. And if we work on you on these 2 things, and by the end of the year, there is no improvement, we give you your money back. Try me on this. Try me. Okay? So, family, blessings. Hit me up on chats or inbox me if you want to join any of the mentorship programs. Let's work with you. I have all my clients start on I4. But if you feel like, hey, in terms of the I4, I'm good, I want to start on C4, you can join that community. Blessings. Stay blessed.